You want to support Roland Marc Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. It's necessary. All right, folks. Every week we profile an author with a new book out on the show. This week, my guest is Dr. Marc Lamont Hill, whose new book is We Still Here, Pandemic, Policing, Protest, and Possibility. Marc, glad you're joining us. There are some English professors who are like, what the hell? We still here?
Exactly.
And they're probably saying to you, how can you be a so-called college professor and you just breaking all the rules? We still here.
I broke every single rule, Roland, and I did it on purpose because I said that I needed to, and it's funny, the publishing house said the same thing. You know, at first they were like, I think you want to say we are still here or we're still here. And I was like, I said what I said. And the reason is because I needed to inspire people with the message of hope and possibility. I mean, we struggling out here. It's a dark moment, but we're going to be victorious. And so my book gives a critical analysis of the moment, but it's a reminder that despite all the evidence to the contrary, all the fights to destroy us, centuries of violence against us, we still here and we ain't going nowhere.
Folks, the book examines the conditions that led black people to where we are today. So, Marc, let's break that down. We talk about the pandemic. We talk about, again, with protests as well and where folks are. Now you also have folks on the Democratic side who say, that this notion of defund the police cost them the seats of purple district Democrats, if you will. I'm still trying to find the evidence of that. Because I personally think that that probably what also happened here is that Democrats were banking on polling too much and not listening to the ground and not understanding that there was going to be a groundswell of support for Trump because he is, for many people, the last bastion or the last hope of white supremacy.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, what we saw on November 4th, the day after the election, is that we didn't have a grand referendum on Trump, or a grand repudiation of Trump. We had 73 million people, give or take, and say that Trump was their guy. It shows just how much people are holding on to white supremacy, how much they're holding on to Trumpism writ large. And that's the issue here. It's not that Democrats didn't run from socialism enough, or they talked about defunding police and Medicare for all and Green New Deals too much, despite what the losers of some House seats would suggest. I happen to agree with AOC on this, and that is that when we ran on the values, when people ran on the values that people are demanding and pushing and advancing, people were successful. The people she campaigned for did just fine. The people who wouldn't let her stand near them suddenly had some trouble. Now, I'm not saying she's the deal maker or deal breaker. It's that she's a signpost of of a certain kind of progressive vision. I think you're right. They listened to those posters. Those same posters had Trump underperforming by 3, 4, 6 points in a lot of these states that he ended up winning or narrowly losing. And so we got to stop listening to the polls, and we have to stop voting our fears and instead vote our hopes. And that's part of what I talk about in the book is we need to not just talk about what we don't want. We need an affirmative vision of what we do want. It's hard as hell to win an office simply by telling people I'm not that guy or I'm not that woman.
Also, I think Democrats and I think Joe Biden and Democrats did the exact same thing that Hillary Clinton did, which I thought was a mistake. They tried to separate the Republican Party from Trump and tell folks, no. It's not them, it's him. I kept saying, no, hell no. It's him and them. He simply is saying out loud what they've always said privately.
100% true. 100% true. He emboldens them. He's able to allow a Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham to be more powerful, but he's also able to allow that random Republican rep, in the middle of the country to have a voice and a power. And so you're right. Trump isn't flying solo here. They love what he's doing. They love what he's saying because he can do it without filter, without varnish. He can be who he wants to be. And that's why we had such a sober awakening, even though many of us woke up on November 4th frustrated and scared because we didn't know who was going to win yet. And, and some of that went away by the 7th when we knew there was going to be a clear winner. There's still a sense that that we have so much more work to do. There's still a sense of fear and anxiety and stress, and it's because there's a whole lot more Trumps scattered around this country, holding not just House and Senate seats, but also they're in the state house, they're in the mayor's office, they're in the governor's office, they're in city council seats all around this country, and that's the work we got to continue to do, fixing that.
You write about the murder of George Floyd, and I contend that right now I think what we're doing is I believe that we're using wrong language. I keep casting this period that we're in terms of the third Reconstruction. I look at this thing in terms of that first Reconstruction, 12 years, 1865 to 1877. I look at the second Reconstruction, 1954, 1970, and then now being the third one. And I think if we only frame this thing in terms of a reckoning, I believe we're missing out on how we must be casting a vision that is much larger. Again, first one 12 years, second arguably 16 years. I keep saying the next one has to be 20 plus more years of sustained focus and action in order to achieve or get close to as we can to a level playing field. If we play the game of the reckoning, then that to me that's short term. That's a few months. That's a year. No. I think we have to be saying no, y'all, no. We talking about large, major, huge, substantive. The first Reconstruction, 13, 14, 15th Amendments. Second Reconstruction, Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, Fair Housing Act of 68. I'm talking about it has to be massive in that way. Your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right. Reckonings don't have budgets attached to them. They don't have court precedents attached to it. We need some substantive change, and across different spaces. I mean, part of what you just talked about in 1865 are these 13, 14, 15th Amendment decisions. So we're looking at legal changes. We're also looking at Supreme Court shifts, and we're looking at shifts in culture and practice. We're fundamentally reshaping how the American economy operates now that the exploited labor of enslaved Africans is no longer available. When you start in 1954, you start with Brown v. Board, right? So you're starting with, again, Supreme Court decision. And then by the time you get to 64, Public Accommodation, 65, Voting Rights Act, now you're looking at legislation. And again, changes on the ground, shifts in labor. We see a general strike with the Montgomery bus boycott. But we have a whole range of tactics and strategies being used right up to 1970. So similarly, if we say this third Reconstruction, to use your language, begins, I would say, around 2014 when the Ferguson uprisings begin. Again, action on the ground. In the same way that Emmett Till's action on the ground that begins in August of 1955. There are actions on the ground that spark this, but it's not enough to have actions on the ground. The action on the ground is then combined with some interesting electoral shifts, which is what we're beginning to see right now on November 3rd, but we got a long way to go. What the question now is, what's going to happen in the court? What's going to happen in terms of the structure of the economy? And because a big part of this Reconstruction is a conversation about law enforcement, what kind of reimagining and reconfiguration of policing can we imagine? Can we finally defund, or from my tradition, abolish policing in prisons? How do we get there? What kind of conversation do we have to have? What are we going to do about student debt? How can we fundamentally reorganize and reimagine? People right now are mad that we want to even take $10,000 off of people's student debt. I mean, these are the conversations we have to have, but I think you're right. The framing is the point, because at the end of this book and at the beginning of the book, I talk about radical imagination. I talk about the freedom dream. You can only change the world as much as you're able to imagine it. And in the same way that they said that we couldn't imagine a world without slavery because the economy was built on it, because it was our culture, because of scientific reasons they made up, because of medical reasons they made up, we had to imagine something different. In the same way they said the Voting Rights Act could never happen. In the same way they said that the first 14th Amendment decision around separate but equal could never be shifted to what we saw with Brown v. Board 1. The same way they thought all that stuff couldn't happen. The same way they thought none of that stuff could happen. We were able to build something different and better. And now we have to be able to imagine a world different and better. In the same way that in 1906, we imagined that no fraternity could get better than Alpha. And then in 1911, we were able to create Kappa Alpha Psi and fundamentally reimagine and improve the world. You think what I'm saying, brother?
Hell no. Hell no.
I thought you was with me.
Now, you know doggone well that last part is absolutely something that came from Newsmax and OANN. I mean, you know that. I mean, that's not even, I mean, even your fellow Kappas are saying, yeah, I think he went a little too far with that one. They said he tried it, but it didn't work. It didn't work. No, you know doggone well that ain't the case. When you talk about this notion of protest.
Yeah.
I think, let me just put it to you this way. We saw so many Black Lives Matter protests taking place in the last 3 or 4 years of Obama. What do you think about what the hell happened in the first 3 years of Trump? Where did it go? Where did they go?
It's a great question. I mean, I think they were there. One of the things that I would say is, you know, working with Black Lives Matter in Philly, I can tell you the resistance never stopped. The protesting never stopped. I think they became far more local. I think they were responsive to more issues. I think you saw the movement for Black Lives become more encompassing of a bunch of other grassroots organizations. And the shift wasn't just to be on the ground talking, because some people were saying, all y'all do is protest. Where's the legislation? Where's the policy? A lot of folk moved in the policy realm. A lot of folks started taking on projects that were trying to actually change the way police departments function, the way mayor's offices function. So I think you saw that. Now, your point, though, is still a good one, right? Which is that in the first 3 years of Trump, there was a hell of a lot to be on the ground about. Whether it's Charlottesville, whether it's this, whether it's that, whether it's immigration, all of these questions are questions that we should be in solidarity with or directly affect us. But I do think Black Lives Matter was there. I think we were on the ground in lots of facets. It just didn't look like the national spectacle. And part of it, Roland, as you know, is that a lot of these corporate media outlets, you know, they became so obsessed with Trump that when we were on the streets, when we were on the ground, they didn't want to show that. And they made their money making Trump president, and they made their money selling us Trump all the time. And as a result, we didn't get all the stories about what was really happening.
Well, which is one of the reasons why I keep arguing that you've got to have independent Black-owned media, because if you keep, if your whole, like, look, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, I told some of the Black Lives Matter activists when they broke an exclusive, they gave it to the New York Times first, I was like, what the hell is that about? I said, will they be there? I said, when other media doesn't show up. I'm like, don't ignore Black media. I said, because if you ignore your base, I said, when you need somebody there, I said, will they actually be there? On the whole notion of, we talk about the policing, and Teresa and Mustafa, I'm going to go to you next with questions for Marc Lamont Hill, and I surely expect Mustafa to have something very critical and smart to say, being that he is an alpha. So the thing on policing, we've seen the pushback with defund the police. But do you believe that the critics have been successful in flipping the narrative that no matter if you keep using it, it's not going to be effective? So, should they say versus defund the police? Should they use another phrase? Because the reality is, when you start looking at how things are being presented, and this is why I tell people all the time, Republicans understand messaging. They know how to flip the whole message around. What should then happen?
It's a good question. I mean, I happen to believe that we have to have this balance of being practical and pragmatic for sure. And messaging does matter. But I think we also have to hold a principled line at times, and not allow the kind of quickness of the moment to make us think something's not going to work. You know, in slavery now, women's rights now, women's suffrage now, rather, were slogans that were pushed for that ultimately were successful. But it took time, and people certainly said no to all of these. I think defunding police, I understand how it ruffles feathers, but I think part of the ruffling of the feathers is starting that conversation. It's making people say, why would we defund the police? And then we can have the conversation about how so many other elements of public life have been defunded. Education's defunded all the time. Healthcare is defunded all the time. Community of school lunches are defunded all the time, and so forth and so on. And so having that conversation, saying we want to take money from this place and place it in other places. Now, I understand you could say we could have a slogan, invest in this. And again, talking about what we want rather than what we don't want. But I think we need to have a critical conversation about the role that police play in our communities and in society. And I think we have to do it. Now, I'm all about strategy. I'm all about being tactical if we have to be. And as an abolitionist, that's what we've been doing for years. When President Obama, just to give you an example, ends on the federal level in 2016, ends a cash bail and calls for an end of privatization of prisons, at the federal level. Those are abolitionist moves, right? But President Obama didn't stand up and say, I'm abolishing prisons. And I'm not saying that even what he wants. But that was part of an abolitionist politics. We didn't have to name it that to get it done. So I'm okay with using tactics and not naming it as such. But I need the end goal to be this thing. And I think we're way too early in the game. Defunding has just become part of the public conversation in the last 6 months. I think it's too early to say that it won't work. I think it's too early to say that we need to change the conversation. As somebody who's been part of the abolitionist movement for 2 decades now, I'm watching too much growth, too much progress to give up just yet.
Questions. I'll start with you, Teresa Lundy from Marc, Lamont Hill.
Thank you. Hey, Marc.
Hey.
Fellow Philly. So I think one of my questions is, and as you guys were talking, I was like, this is obviously in my realm of business. So I have to get this book and figure out what the possibilities actually look like. So I think, I'm always coming from the angle of what does the next generation, what the millennial generation could look like, because I think right now they're in this space of we're now protesting, we're on the front lines, we're getting little sound clips, we're starting our own businesses and we're looking great while we're doing it, but are we effective? So what does the possibilities look like in this age of error that you describe in your book?
Yeah, I think there are a few possibilities. One, I think we can't foreclose on anything, right? It's too early to give up on anything. Some of the possibilities are in the voting booth. I mean, we just saw on November 3rd what a difference it makes when you got young people energized to come out and vote. You see what happens when we put all of our time and money into, and quite frankly, what the Clinton campaign could have done 4 years ago by being much more targeted and specific and diligent in addressing certain voters or certain bases. But when you see that there's 73 million people on the table who went for Trump, many of whom were undecided, millions were undecided, or at least could have gone the other way, we know that we have so much more room to grow. So at the electoral level, there's so much room to do. But at the imaginative level, there's so much more we can do. We can think about how we can reimagine this economy. We can think about how we could properly address small business owners. One of the things I talk about in this book is how the PPP loans. You got companies like Shake Shack, which are worth billions. They have 6,000 employees getting small business loans that were designed for people with 50 employees or less, and small businesses up the street couldn't. We have to, and how many hundreds of them were publicly traded. 110 of them, I believe, had donated to Trump or some Trump-related PAC in the last 5 years. So we see what inside baseball looks like. We have to unpack that stuff and say, what are the possibilities of an economy that really tries to speak to small business owners? What does an economy look like that tries to give you more than a $1,200 check for over a 6-8 month period? What can this thing look like? And we also have to imagine a new social order. In Philadelphia, our hometown, Walter Wallace was killed. And people had a debate about whether the police should have shot him or not. What would they have done if they had a taser? Could they have talked him down? Could they have done this? Could they have done that? I'm saying let's have a more ambitious freedom dream. Let's have a more ambitious freedom dream that asks the question, how can we create a world where your mama ain't got to call the police when you're having a mental health episode? How can we create a world where people's needs are met so that the police don't have to be the first line and have to do all these jobs, tax collector in Ferguson, mental health advocate in Philadelphia, right? Domestic dispute person in Minneapolis. How can we reimagine the world so that people's needs are met differently? That's where I want to be.
Mustafa.
Marc, it's good to see you. I'm going to leave that revisionist history alone about Alpha and Kappa Alpha Psi. But the question is, as a scholar, and you're an incredible scholar. Was there anything in your research and creating the book that was surprising to you that you said, you know what, I have to have this in this book because it's going to be transformational. It's going to help folks move forward.
Yeah, I have a chapter in this book called Corona Capitalism. And what I'm looking at is the way the pandemic has viciously affected the most vulnerable among us. At the same time, looking at how the billionaire class has grown, how much money they've made, how much they've increased their wealth. And when I looked at the numbers, there were times where I had to do a double take. I had to do a triple take because I was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. I'm looking at the book right now just to give you some context. In April of 2020, that's the same month that 20 Americans filed for unemployment. The wealth of American billionaires grew by 10%. It went up to 3.2 trillion. In June, when 42.6 million people had filed for unemployment in the previous 11 weeks, the U.S. billionaires, they got 20% richer, meaning that they added $565 billion to their collective wealth. And when you look at the Jeff Bezoses of the world, right, in the first quarter of 2020, his personal net worth went up by $24 billion. And you got to add how this happens, right? And so looking at the companies, looking at the individuals, I was shocked to see the gap. I knew the gap between the billionaire class and everyday people was big, but when I saw how much money was made off of Corona by everybody, except the people on the front lines of Tyson Foods who had to make that chicken to keep America fed, even though they were risking their lives getting coronavirus and didn't even get time off, didn't even get PPE, didn't get personal protective equipment. When I looked at the gap, I was stunned by it, man. I got to tell you, man, and I've been studying this for a long time, but I've never seen anything quite this disturbing.
Folks, the book is called We Still Here, Pandemic, Policing, Protest, and Possibility by Dr. Marc Lamont Hill. And we certainly appreciate him being on the show. We don't like it when people come on with foul phrases they wear on T-shirts, and that simply is that. But we also know this here. Without Alpha, y'all will simply be Kappa Psi.
Wow. I'll let you have that one.
No. You can't let me have something. What you're really saying is, damn, I cannot come up with one that fast to respond to that one because, one, he ain't lying. See, Alpha's still topping y'all. I know. It's all good. It's all good. I appreciate it. Somebody has to join the youth groups. Marc Lamont Hill.
I'm getting out of here. I don't feel safe here. It's too many.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. You might want to go to a safe space. All right. See, that's how y'all Kappas do. All right, Marc Lamont Hill, we appreciate it. Back to our Roland Marc Unfiltered video in just one.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. So the issue of free speech is a critically important one. My next guest has a book that speaks about that. Ellis Cose joins us right now. Folks, if you pull his book cover up, that'll be great. Do you have it? Go ahead and pull it up, please. Come on, let's pull a graphic up, please, of his book. His book, please. Come on. Thank you very much. The Short Life and Curious Death of Free Speech in America by Ellis Cose. Ellis, always glad to have you here. We're just talking about the Breonna Taylor case. It's very interesting what has been happening around this country. You had Tennessee, where all these people all of a sudden are passing laws restricting folks from protesting. It's the First Amendment. And in fact, in Tennessee, they even passed a law that would actually cause you to lose your right to vote because you dare protest.
We're in strange times, Roland. You know, as you obviously know, we're in a time when the Republican Party has claimed that they are the champions of the First Amendment. You had 5 or 6 different speakers devote most of their talks of the Republican convention to how they are strong on free speech. At the same time, when they have this recent history of the president shutting down a demonstration in Lafayette Park in order for him to march, violently shutting down a demonstration, in order for him to march around with a Bible and stand in front of a church for a photo op. You have cities, you have states all over this place, where politicians, Republican politicians, are trying to depress the black vote and the minority vote. What is the large problem you have currently in this country, it seems to me, is that you have a minority party, I mean the Republican Party, that is insistent on trying to stay in charge against the will of a majority. And a lot of the things that they adapt are become outright violations of free speech. And certainly if you count the right to vote as part of free speech, and most scholars these days do, then all these efforts, the efforts in Florida to stop people who were convicted of crimes, even though a proposition allows them to vote now because they have to pay their fines first, and the efforts you're talking about in Tennessee are all part and parcel of this.
But the thing when you talk about what happened in Florida, first of all, Amendment 4 passes. Took 10 years to get that amendment passed. And then all of a sudden, the Republican legislature says, oh, hell no. And I kept warning people. I told Sheena Mead and Desmond Mead, I said, look, don't get too excited. I said, trust me, I don't trust the Republicans in Florida. They are going to do something because they do not want to see all of a sudden 1.4 million people get the right to vote. What soon happens? They have the power there. The Democrats have no authority because, frankly, Republicans control the legislature, passed a law. Republicans control the Supreme Court. They affirm that particular law. And then you go to the federal court. You go to the 11th Circuit. Guess what? Donald Trump has appointed more than 200 federal judges. They affirm that decision. And so now it's right. Now you got to pay all fines and fees. And the total is upwards of $700 million collectively that is going to be owed, which is why you have efforts like LeBron James and others to help people pay off these fines. But this is what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with, Ellis, we're dealing with individuals, and I'll be real clear, you're dealing with a Republican Party, a largely white party, who is looking at the demographic shifts, and they're saying, how can we hold on to power as long as possible? And we're going to use the control of the legislatures to do so.
Oh, precisely. And in Florida, Florida is a not a bellwether state, but it's a state that can go either way. And when you're talking about over 1 million votes that are in play, and most of those votes would be Democratic, that's enough to flip that state. And so you're seeing these measures, as I said, all over the place. But you're seeing a doubling down on speech repression disguised as a articulation of free speech, and then you're also seeing just the bastardization of the whole notion of free speech, or at least the whole argument for free speech which goes back to the 1920s and a lot of decisions that were written by Louis Brandeis, who basically argued that the reason that you need free speech in a democracy is that speech is the way you get to truth. And that in order to get to truth, you need as much speech as possible, because ultimately good speech will drown out bad speech, and untrue speech will drown out and true speech rather would drown out untrue speech. What we have in this age of disinformation and blatant government manipulation of information and lying about information is a testing of that hypothesis, and it seems to be not true because the government is capable and wealthy interests are capable of passing off their truth, which is not truth at all, as truth, which fundamentally undermines the whole purpose of the First Amendment and fundamentally undermines our democracy.
We and the march that we're going on, and the reason I brought those judges up, because just this week, 8 judges, Mitch McConnell is confirming. And these are judges. So again, what happens? And this is what I keep trying to explain to people about understanding why the federal courts play a role in this. So sure. We can argue, yell, and scream, which we should, the importance of electing people, electing African Americans as district attorneys, as state reps, state senators, to statewide races. Then you have this ballot initiative that black folks led, gets passed. Now all of a sudden, okay, then the Republican legislature passes a law. It now they sue, it goes to the federal court. And so when people say, I'm just going to ignore the top of the ticket, I'm going to vote what's below that. No, understand that top of the ticket, that this thing is like a domino effect. So you can get a law passed, bust your butt, took a decade, and still those federal judges can either invalidate it, affirm it, or rule it unconstitutional or constitutional. And that's why we have to, Ellis, as far as I'm concerned, be in a constant state of civic lessons, teaching people to connect the dots.
And as you imply, I mean, those federal judges are appointed for life. And so the whole idea, and the Federalist Society was very smart. I mean, they basically decided they were going to make a mission of picking the most conservative, of selecting the most conservative judges they could, and getting them installed by a Republican president on the bench. And some of these judges are in their 30s, and 40s. They're going to be around for 30, 40, maybe 50 years. Yep. Long after the so-called non-whites become a majority in this country, they will be determining what our fate is. And we're coming late to the table as a group of people who are not Republicans and recognizing how important this is.
So what do you see in terms of where we're going to be in the next 10 years? What should people be looking for when it comes to this attack on free speech?
Oh, I think there are a range of things. I think we have to figure out as a society what we are going to do about speech in the internet age. A lot of hate speech, a lot of this misinformation is spread through the internet. And I'm not suggesting that we ought to censor the internet, but what I am suggesting is we need to have a better way of monitoring the internet. I mean, the position, for instance, that Facebook has taken consistently with lying and political ads is crazy. I mean, basically what they are saying is that it's perfectly okay to use their distribution medium for propaganda that they know is propaganda, that is easily recognizable propaganda, and that is injurious to our country. I mean, we clearly need to get a handle on that.
Well, heck, there's a new report out that dropped last night that shows that one of their whistleblower said how other nations are purposely spreading disinformation on Facebook that is impacting elections. And Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, they know it and refuse to do anything about it.
Yeah, and that's totally unacceptable. I mean, the other thing that we've seen, and you've already addressed this, ramp up considerably are these efforts to repress votes, whether they are through reimposing fines of one sort or another, whether they are through reinstating in a sense the old poll tax of the post-Civil War era. Ways that in any way possible just to cull the polls, the rolls, and to stop minority people from voting. There are a lot of efforts that have come up lately to oppose these, and we need even more because this is a life and death issue at this point.
Folks, again, we're talking with Ellis Cose. He is the author of this book. Go ahead and pull it up again. And it's really important, folks, where we are in terms of our society, in terms of free speech, and we should not take it for granted. Guys, come on, pull the graphic up. Thank you. The short life and curious death of free speech in America. The thing that we have to understand also is when you look at Donald Trump's constant attacks on the media, fake news, fake news, fake news. It is all by design.
Well, it's by design, and it's been reasonably effective.
Yes.
In a few ways. I mean, if you look at a recent poll, for instance, although 91% of Americans support freedom of the press, 40% also believe that the president ought to have the power to shut down those medias that misbehave. And they specifically included among that CNN and the New York Times. So he has actually garnered a constituency behind him that believes he should have the power to violate the First Amendment. He should have the power on his authority to shut down newspapers, to shut down broadcast entities. Happily, we're not at the point yet where he can exercise that non-power. But the very fact that 40% of Americans have been taken in by his rhetoric and this talk about the enemy, the press being the enemy of the people, and are willing to see him act on that, to me, that's a frightening statistic.
I want to pull in my panel here, get a chance to ask you a question. I'll start with Teresa Lundy. Teresa.
Yeah, I kind of want to know, as much as I'm really fascinated with the points that you're making, but I'm kind of wondering where did the idea of putting this into a book, because I'm sure there's probably been some stuff early on that, we could have addressed, but why put it in a book?
You're basically asking why I decided to write this book. And there are a few reasons. My most recent position was as the writer in residence for the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. And ultimately, I stepped down from that because I had decided to write a history of the ACLU, which was just published a couple of months ago, called Democracy If We Can Keep It. And I had, in thinking through, and one of the things that I also did at the ACLU, though, was to think through as a sort of project for them, the education of Americans, and particularly of college students on this issue of speech, which is one of their big issues. And the thinking that I did with that, and I should say one of the places that I went after leaving the ACLU was to become a fellow at the Free Speech Center at the University of California. So I've been thinking a lot, because for those several reasons, about where we are in speech, the history of speech, what it means, why it's important, why we have it, and what its state is now. And I decided that it was worth doing a book on. So that's the short answer to why I decided to do this book.
Next question, Malik.
Yeah, so actually, one of the things that we know that just over the years, probably since 2016, there's been a big effort out there in reference to free speech and blocking people's access to free speech, whether that was blocking Trump rallies or even going after people at restaurants, going after people who were announced to attend commencement speeches and things like that. So as
Sure.
your overall picture of free speech, is it just isolated to how it affects the left? Or do you include anything as far as just the efforts we know that are real efforts to block conservatives from free speech as well? Is it just limited to the left?
No. There's a whole chapter on that. But I think you kind of misconstrue what the argument is going on about free speech on campus, which is largely a manufactured argument and largely manufactured by conservatives because they want to take possession of the free speech debate. And if you talk about Milo Yiannopoulos, who essentially took over UC Berkeley for a huge event that he did, which became violent, which was shut down because it was violent, which cost the university millions of dollars in security to secure in the first place. And then he uses this as a weapon to say his free speech has been violated. And on the basis of that alone, the president issues an executive order telling universities they have to respect free speech. I'm not for shutting anybody down. I'm not for a cancel culture. But when you have people like me, like Milo Yiannopoulos and like Ann Coulter, whose whole reason for existing is to say stupid, provocative things, and then to get people upset about them, and then to say, "Oh my God, I'm being shut down." The last person in the world being shut down is Ann Coulter. You hear her everywhere. She's not being shut down. Her free speech is not being denied. Milo Yiannopoulos' free speech was certainly not being denied by the universities. But I think that what happens is conservatives want to take the issue and present it that way. So so you have, like I said before, you have Trump, who shuts down a rally, marches through a park with a Bible, and then protests about free speech. Give me a break. Yes, there is an issue of free speech on campus, and you had the University of Chicago, which came out specifically against that and made a big statement, which many universities have now joined, saying that they don't back this idea of canceling people. They are not going to permit this on their campus. They are going to punish students who do it. You don't see anybody on the right saying we're going to punish people who shut down people from the left. So yes, I agree with you. It's an issue that should apply to both sides, but it should also be analyzed from both sides and fairly.
See, the thing I find, here's the thing that people have to understand before I go to Kelly, Ellis, is that on this very issue, to your point, conservatives played the victim game. Look, when I was at CNN, there are people who make money. I'm talking about make money off of the liberal media. I said CNN could go hire 1,000 conservatives tomorrow, and the next day they're going to yell, "The media is still liberal." This is a part of the game. Adam Carolla and Dennis Prager did some documentary talking about how free speech is eroding, and it was like, look what YouTube is doing. PragerU hit 1 billion views on YouTube, but part of the complaining is, they're taking our speech. That's why Zuckerberg right now, let's just be real clear, he is scared of Donald Trump criticizing him in tweets, and that's why this whole dancing. Oh, what can I do to make conservatives feel good? To see those two that minstrel show, Diamond and Silk, before Congress, they was complaining, how they were censored on Facebook for the craziness. No. You got people who want to say crazy stuff, and then if you say you can't do it, you're censoring me. My speech is now being quelled.
Well, precisely. I think the other thing that's important to understand, there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what the constitutional guarantee of free speech is. It is not a guarantee that anybody must be granted an audience wherever they want to speak. What it does specifically is it bars Congress, and by implication, the federal government, from imposing limits on speech. Just a little historical note. Until the 20th century, free speech didn't even apply to state governments. That came about as a result of court decisions, and specifically a decision in 1925 called Gitlow v. New York, where they decided that the First Amendment applied to the states. Before that, it didn't, which is why states were able to abolish the distribution of abolitionist literature. And so, the reason why I wrote this book, is partly to just give that history, because people need to understand what this country means when it says free speech, what is specifically protected by our Constitution and what is not.
Kelly Bethea, question for Ellis Cose.
So, given the current political climate, specifically when it comes to free speech and the assault against it, more or less, how exactly do you fight it? Because when I was in law school, we talked about, I took First Amendment law, and we talked about, the free marketplace of ideas, and how you typically, or at least the theory is that the truth will come to light by way of more or less a flooding of the truth coming in, drowning out the lies. And right now, specifically in 2020, and really during this Trump administration, it's almost like the opposite is happening. So how do you combat that when that theory of flooding the marketplace with the truth isn't working in favor of the truth?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I'll say outright out front, I don't have a total answer to that. I really don't. I don't think we've come up with one yet. But I think part of the answer is that you insist on challenging these lies, this misinformation, and calling it what it is. I think we have conventions in the press, in the press, and I've been a member of the press my entire adult life. We have conventions in the press that lead us to respect people who are lying to us because we believe in giving both sides. And I think what has become clear is that that's not adequate anymore when you have an entire administration practically that lies all the time, and it depends on you not to challenge them. And so I think the role, I mean, this became an issue during McCarthyism when an editor suggested we fact check everything McCarthy says. That never really happened. But I think that increasingly needs to happen when in this age, when propaganda, misinformation has become just a part of politics. Also, I mean, despite the bleak landscape in the judicial branch, there are going to be more appointments made to federal judges and whatnot, which is why it's important to have someone other than these conservative Republicans making these appointments. And there will be a revisiting of some important decisions, including Citizens United, which was the decision that eviscerated the Feingold Act, and which basically gives rich corporations and other institutions the ability to flood money into political races and to influence the result.
Folks, fascinating discussion. You definitely want to get this book. This is the latest book by Ellis Cose. It is called The Short Life and Curious Death of Free Speech in America. You want to get that. Ellis, I often use your book, The Rage of a Privileged Class, in many of my speeches. And so it's always good to chat with you.
I'm honored, sir. You take good care.
Ellis, thanks a bunch. All right, folks, back to our Roland Marc Unfiltered video in just one moment. Seek.com is a black-owned company founded by Mary Spio. They have these amazing products. They have their virtual reality headset right here. Allows for you to take your cell phone, pop it right into here. You can watch their virtual reality content on their site, Seek.com. You can also, of course, watch other 360-degree video, and it puts you right there in the same space. So that's this particular headset. They also have their 360-degree 4D headphones, folks, which are great for you to be able to do gaming. You can also, of course, use it for music, for videos as well. It's a really solid solid deal here. I love these headphones. Again, when I'm able to, when I'm walking and working out and doing things along those lines. And so you want to check this out. Again, these headphones right here, which are pretty cool. Go to Seek.com, CEEK.com. Use the promo code RMVIP2020, RMVIP2020. And then you'll get a discount on one or both of these products. And so we certainly appreciate Seek.com being a partner with Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible. All right, folks. Let's talk about this here. Earlier, I showed you Kayleigh McEnany and her insane defense of Donald Trump's Confederate tweets trying to slam Bubba Wallace. Then we had, of course, his just beyond stupid speech over the weekend at Mount Rushmore, and that travesty of an event happening in D.C. It's real clear who Donald Trump appealing to. We knew it the moment he came down that escalator when he ran for president in 2015, and all the other media people not paying attention, black people, we knew what was going on. That's why I use the hashtag we tried to tell you. Well, he's really dealing with white politics, and everybody, of course, is so focused on what white people think because, frankly, they've been the majority in this country. and the dominant force, but that is changing. We're 23 years away from America becoming a nation majority of people of color. In her new book, Zerlina Maxwell has this: The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. She joins me right now. Zerlina, what's happening?
What's up? How are you?
Glad to have you on the show. Bottom line is, we talk about how to heal our liberal divide. So are you really dealing with white politics on the liberal side or white politics overall?
I think, I'm a Democrat. I've worked for Democratic presidential campaigns. So I think, I was focused on the Democratic side, but that doesn't mean that I ignore Republicans, because they are looking at the same data that I was looking at. So when Pew Research is projecting that America will be a minority white nation by 2045, Republicans are hearing that data as well. And since their voters are mostly white, they are trying to suppress the vote of those people of color that are the majorities in many critical states. And they're trying to ensure minority rule, planning for that moment when people of color are the majority. So I don't ignore the Republicans, but I focus on Democrats because I think that they're playing a white politics when the base of the Democratic Party is not white. And so it is completely ridiculous that in 2020, heading into this election against Donald Trump again, we did not seem to learn the correct message from the 2016 Electoral College defeat.
Oh, and to that particular point, I mean, the thing that gets me is like, look, I totally get it. Like, it amazed me, like the whole talk. Hey, Senator Amy Klobuchar should be a great pick because she can really help us in the Midwest. And I'm going, but I thought that's why Biden was supposed to be the guy, because he was white and he's supposed to get the people in Scranton and in Wisconsin and Michigan. And I keep making this point that, look, Democrats cannot continue to act like black people are political sharecroppers. We're going to till the land but not benefit financially from tilling the land.
Well, here's the thing, Roland. Black people live in Detroit. They also live in Milwaukee and in Philadelphia. And so this idea that we're going to try to get back that white working class male voter in the Midwest is a fantasy. What we need to focus on is turning out the 1 million+ black voters that turned out in 2012. And then for whatever reason, whether it was voter suppression or whatever else, they didn't show up in 2016. Additionally, I think we have to focus on turning out even more than that, because I think that there's really just a lack of concentrated focus and investment in communities to help build out the Democratic Party infrastructure so that we can actually turn out the vote and respond to issues as they come up. We go at the end of the election cycle that weekend before to ask people to GOTV without giving them substantive reasons to vote.
Well, part of that, and let's just go ahead and be clear, part of that is because when you talk about these campaigns, you have candidates who get it, but your campaign apparatus, a bunch of white folks. And so let's just be real clear. Look, we can go ahead and say it. In 2016, you were on the Hillary Clinton campaign. Jamil Burley was on the campaign. Here were black people who, before they got on the campaign, I could get on my show without any problem. Y'all get on the campaign, and I can't get y'all on the show. And y'all are sitting on the inside saying, hey, white people, we're here to do shows like this, and they made it difficult. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And y'all sitting there like, I would love to do it, but the white folks over here, they got other ideas.
Yeah, that was a really frustrating thing about 2016. I think, when you're talking about a presidential campaign, it's such a large bureaucracy that there's so many different levels of approval, from you asking me to come on and me actually being allowed to come on. I think I did come on a couple of times, but it definitely was something where it had to go through that levels of approvals before it could actually happen. What I'm trying to say in this book is there shouldn't need to be levels of approval to have black staff. First of all, to have the black staff that's necessary. Now, in 2020, compared to 2016, Biden is woefully insufficient in terms of black women he's hired, black people he's hired. And so he has work to do there. But in 2016, there was black women all over the place, all around me on the Hillary Clinton campaign. And part of the problem was I felt like we were not then publicly facing. And so people had no insight that there were more Black women on Hillary's campaign than any campaign in American history. And I think that that would have been helpful to at least allow people to have a more open mind towards Hillary's candidacy and her potential plans for their lives. I think that, if they had seen Black women on the inside, I think that we are validators. I think that we're the moral compass. We are the moral center of the Democratic Party, and I think the progressive movement and the nation, frankly, to quote Mignon Moore, she's told me that recently. And so I think that we're the ones that you need on the inside and along your side as you're trying to go and be the president. I mean, you can't win without us.
But here's the deal. It wasn't just Black women. I mean, I remember trying to get Alvin Brown on my Tom Joyner segment. And here was the craziest thing. And again, what this speaks to is, for me, the problem is that when you look at who's running, who's in control of the money, who's in control of the apparatus. And the bottom line, as you start going up, it gets wider and wider and wider, and male, male, male. We were at the Congressional Black Caucus. This is September 2016. I tell Hillary Clinton directly, like we're 3 feet away, saying, I can't get people on. I'm trying to call for your surrogates. And then I'm like, y'all got a problem with Black men? Do y'all see what's going on? Can I get I said, who are the Black men supporting your campaign? Why aren't you getting them out there? Huma's there, Marlon Marshall's there. And at one point, Huma goes, Secretary, we're going to get it done. She says, get it done. I'm tired of the excuses. And I was like, uh-oh. Then they get pissed at me because I raised the question. And I'm sitting there going, the next day, I asked for Alvin Brown, 11 hours, Zerlina, 11 hours. I didn't get an answer. And then finally, I think I just booked a Black woman and had her on. But the issue that we have, that we are always making the point, is that we're frozen out of the apparatus. We're frozen out of the decision making. We're frozen out of the money. And so if you chose to be a Black political consultant, you get frozen out of the contracts. Yet white boys over here are pulling down several $1 million repeatedly. That's also part of this problem when you talk about the end of white politics, because they only see themselves and they control the levers of power and money.
Yeah, I talk about that in the book. I talk about the white male consulting class in Washington, D.C. and outside of D.C. that work on Democratic campaigns. They go from one to the next. And oftentimes they think they know everything. And I think that part of the problem with that, I mean, we see this in the media as well. White men who are in charge, they sort of sit up on a perch and they observe, and they feel like they can then understand and, provide the best strategy for an experience that they have never had. And I think that the problem in 2016, I'm not seeing that as much in 2020, because I think that people are much more open about these kinds of issues, particularly in this racial reckoning we're going through. But I do think in 2016, part of the problem was, it just took too long for, folks like myself, folks like Mignon Moore and Maya Harris, to sort of get the message across of some of the changes that needed to be made. But I do ultimately think, in hindsight, that, the campaign did improve. It just wasn't enough at the end.
You have a chapter called the hashtag kids.
Yes.
And the reality is, appealing to those voters is a lot different than appealing to Gen X and baby boomer.
Absolutely. You need to know how to use all of the social media platforms, and you need to know what content to put on those platforms and which surrogates potentially to use instead of Joe Biden, because you don't necessarily want Joe Biden on TikTok, but you want to make sure that his presence is ubiquitous throughout all social media platforms, so that people that exist on those platforms and are using it in their daily lives are paying attention and are engaged, not just to vote in November for the president, but also to vote for all those down ballot races. And I think that, part of the errors I'm seeing so far is just the assumption that Joe Biden as the messenger is the wrong person to talk to young people. That may be true. I don't know that that's true. I actually think that, he's a pretty authentic guy. So I feel like he can sort of talk to anybody. That's one of his strengths in this moment, strangely. But I think that, part of the problem is they generally think that only the principal can be the messenger for the campaign. and their, surrogates are used in a strategic fashion. One of the things I hope they do, and I think that they're going to start doing it because I've seen that they're going to start doing influencer IG lives with campaign surrogates and celebrities with big followings, so that they can at least get the message out in those social media platforms where the millennials and the Gen Z kids are. Because in 2016, there was sort of a dearth of knowledge about Black Twitter, what it is, what's going on there, and how to engage with Black people generally in social media spaces. So I think that that's one of the things that they can improve upon in this cycle. And I see them taking steps to do that. That's refreshing to see.
One of the things that this chapter on the white resistance, I think is quite interesting, because I think part of this issue is that when you talk about campaigns, white folks don't see themselves in terms of their whiteness. So what will happen is, I use this phrase, they'll say, well, Joe Biden is going to meet with a group of Black pastors. Joe Biden is going to meet with a group of Latino activists. And then it's, Joe Biden's going to meet with a group of business leaders. Well, they all white? And so they are uncomfortable. It's like they've been in power so long, they will identify everybody else based upon a group of women, a group of Blacks, a group of Latinos, where I'm like a group of white folks. And they're going to have to get used to being called that. And it sort of shakes them at their core, because they're kind of like, whoa, hold up. I'm like, yeah, if you're going to say meet with a group of Black preachers, I'm going to say he meet with a group of white preachers.
Well, maybe they should be meeting with white preachers on the Democratic side. But I do think, part of the problem is we default to white as an identity, as, the identity that we start from, and then everything else is identity politics. Basically, what I'm saying in this book is that is backwards. We are doing identity politics. We just call it politics. And
right.
We start from the position that white men and what they want and what they need it trumps everything, for lack of a better term. And so I think when
they make up 36% barely of the population, like, oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. One of the things I like to always remind people is that, by 2045, when white people are a minority, that we should also stop saying this term that I love to hear sometimes, we're going to become a majority minority country. No, white Americans will be the minority. That is the sentence. People of color, mostly Latinx people, frankly, will make up the majority in many states, even before 2045. In 4 states, they already are. So I think that, everybody needs to get the memo now, because Republicans actually are already going about efforts to suppress this vote that is emerging as a majority in many of these places. That's why they're putting people on the bench. That's why they're doing voter ID. That's why they're trying to suppress the vote. They understand the numbers. The Democrats just didn't get the memo.
So one of the things I do want to talk about, you speak about the Obama coalition, and one of the things that I don't think people really understand is that to me the Obama coalition wasn't necessarily just this multiracial group. What it really was activating people who were in those critical groups. Mm-hmm. You talk about in the book 75 million millennials, more than baby boomers. But the key is having demographic numbers means nothing if you don't exercise your actual power by voting. And so the Obama coalition, they actually did that. And that to me, so people can tout, the Obama coalition, but if you don't get the Obama coalition out to vote, it means nothing talking about a coalition.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. I think what I'm saying is that you sort of want to rebuild the same coalition, multiracial coalition of voters, but you actually have to try to get those different voters, right? And your point about the young people and how Obama, particularly in Iowa in 2007, was able to turn out young voters in Iowa, college students, sporadic voters that don't vote in every single election. He was able to remake the electorate. In this instance, we don't necessarily have to remake anything, but it would be very good to not rely only upon, what pollsters like to define as the likely voter, the voter who voted in the most recent two presidential elections, because there are myriad reasons why somebody would skip an election or miss an election. And so they should still be spoken to by the party infrastructure or the campaign. And so what I'm saying in the Obama coalition chapter is, it's one thing to identify who your voters are, but you actually have to try to talk to them. Part of the problem with the way the Democrats go about it is that they literally don't even try. They're like, well, Donald Trump is terrible and racist. I mean, who else are you going to vote for? I mean, that's basically the argument, because they don't provide, substantive messaging and actual investment in those communities to turn out those sporadic voters that you're talking about.
Also boots on the ground. So you have this passage where you say, my time on the Obama campaign as a field organizer in Virginia was very different from my time with Hillary in 2016, where I spent every day as a director of progressive media in the campaign's Brooklyn headquarters, clicking away at my MacBook keyboard, hoping that our message was reaching our audience. Campaigns like to say they are doing what Obama did and knocking on doors, but you'll notice that they usually aren't until it's already too late in the election cycle. These days, they do more phone banking than door knocking. The point of door knocking isn't just to engage voters the last weekend before the election in order to remind them to vote and make sure they know where to go, but to ask them first and foremost, what is it that they need? That's pretty much what Ella Baker always said. You go to the show Sharecroppers and say, what do you care about? And now I then have to then speak to you on how my candidate speaks to those issues.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think, part of the problem is that they show up too late asking for your vote, but they haven't provided a reason. And you need to give folks a reason. You need to show up early and be in communication on the ground. I mean, when I was a field organizer in 2008, it was my first job on a presidential campaign. It's the brunt work of a campaign. But one of the things I learned is that there were people I was talking to 3 and 4 times. So the third time I'm talking to Judy on the doors, about the first black president, Barack Obama, she may have leaned Republican, but the third time she knows who I am at this point. So part of what Obama did really well, I mean, I was among the type of field organizer that went to a battleground state. But one of the things he did really, really well, he incorporated what they called the neighbor to neighbor program, which I cite in the book, which is basically people signing up and creating their own precinct teams. Now, this is not, a novel idea that no one has ever come up with before, and Democrats everywhere do this, but I think that they actually need to be serious about it. And instead, what they often do is, they'll do all of the GOTV motions. They'll go through the motions, but they're not actually, their heart isn't in it, and they're coming too late. And they're going to church service every Sunday, a month before the election, but they're not talking to anybody who's outside of that church. And so they need to look at the Black community and Brown community as the fulsome and diverse communities they are, and go and speak to them in those actual communities, and stop just going, where you traditionally would assume people are, like a church service.
What is your assessment? And you talk about in the Obama coalition chapter, you talk about Senator Cory Booker, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. But you look at this year, you had Congressman Julian Castro, you had Booker, Harris, who were running. Why do you think the minority candidates were not able to connect? Was it this belief that after 16, oh my God, we have to get an old white guy? And then it became this self-fulfilling prophecy where the only way we can compete, because look, I'll be honest, every time I turned on Morning Joe and you saw stuff on CNN, it was Michael Moore, oh, we got to listen to these people in the Rust Belt. And I'm sitting there going, no, we don't. They need to be listening to some other people as well. And I think what happened, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy that the only way we can compete against Trump is to go get an old white guy. And folks just said, okay, that's it. What do you think happened? Why the Black and Latino candidates could not connect with those voters in those early states?
I think, it's a couple different reasons, because, as you know, we have a media filter. So everything that we're learning and understanding about these candidates is through that filter. And that filter is just like the campaign problem, where you have mostly white men in charge. And so, you're only getting a narrow perspective. And that's why you saw, for example, more positive coverage about Mayor Pete versus Senator Kamala Harris or Senator Amy Klobuchar or Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I don't know about you, but like a mayor of a small town versus 3 women senators, I mean, there's 3 people in that conversation that are very serious contenders for president. And then there's Mayor Pete, who is a very nice person. But I just don't think that, the way the media covered him as if he was the second coming of Obama. I mean, people really said that.
Yeah.
That
Including some former Obama people.
Right. I was like, weren't really confronting the privileges that he was afforded because he was showing up in a white man's body. And so, part of the problem is that you have a lack of imagination when it comes to who can be in positions of power. We were definitely traumatized after 2016. And so people definitely were concerned about who those white voters were going to vote for. I don't know how many times I heard, older Black voters say, well, I like Kamala, but I don't know if other people will vote for Kamala or a Black woman, or insert the name of another candidate there. So I think part of the problem is that the fear of what sort of white moderate voters will do. But part of what I'm saying in the book is we don't have to worry about them. We don't have to worry about them. First of all, the more conservative white voters, they're Republicans. They are right. Republicans, and they have always been Republicans. When the 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump, that was not a surprise. That was consistent with 2012, 2008, and beyond. We don't win the white vote on the Democratic side. We haven't won the white vote since 1964. So I think part of our strategy should stop only supporting and financing, frankly, candidates of color who are more diverse and come from different backgrounds, because we are afraid that white Americans, more moderate white Americans, won't vote for a history-making candidate like that. I think, 2016 was a machination of a lot of different factors. If you list, 10 factors why Hillary Clinton lost the Electoral College, all of them are correct. They're all correct, right? You don't know which one had more or less to do with it. If it was Russia, if it was voter suppression, all of her gender, all of these things are relevant. The point is that all of those things are going to be happening going forward. So what are we going to do about the fact that bias exists, sexism exists, racism exists, voter suppression exists? And so now we have to work within the world that we actually live in, but the numbers are actually on our side. So let's actually act like Republicans and get to work with the numbers that are on our side and use them to our advantage, instead of just allowing them to suppress those votes that are, could and potentially help Democrats make Congress different, make the Senate different, and make the White House different.
Well, but I think that's also a part of when you say the end of white politics, we got to go ahead and say it. We got to have the end of white media. See, I think a huge part of this is, frankly, who is controlling those shows? Who are the producers? Who are the executives? And so when I use the hashtag, we tried to tell you, Black people knew exactly what Trump was going to do. Black people read what Coretta Scott King said about Jeff Sessions. Black people saw Donald Trump for exactly what he was. But I remember sitting there watching Joe Scarborough and Marc, what was his name? The one who got fired. Marc Halperin just sort of dismissed the early story about how Trump treats women. And I watched these other stories, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, do y'all not see what's going on? And I think, to your point about how media drives it, you did not have Black people who were hosts, who were on shows every day for longer than 5 or 6 minutes. You did not have Black executives who could say, we see this thing. So just like when you talk about how we see these things differently in campaigns, we also see these things differently in media. And that's the reason why, I think, to your point, why Buttigieg, all of a sudden, oh my God, he's white male and he speaks so great in these different languages, he's gay and all these different things. And Black people kind of like, but 150,000 or less people in your city, and now you're going to be the next president? When there was a dude, Wayne Messam, who actually was the mayor of a larger city in Florida, who got no attention whatsoever. I think media is a huge part of this too.
I do think the media plays a role. I definitely address that in the book. I do think that, the sexism and the racism and those biases that I'm talking about in terms of campaign staff, I mean, I've existed on both sides. So I can see both of the biases at play, whether I'm, in a TV segment or whether or not I was working on the campaign. And some, most of it is not malicious. It's literally blind spots that people have because they only have one lived experience. And of course, just because you live one life and you're exposed to a lot of different other people, it doesn't mean you can speak for the Black experience, or how to cover appropriately the Black experience. And I think that, one of the things that's been revealed in this moment is that the surprise after George Floyd's murder of the protest and everybody sort of going outside in the middle of a pandemic, understanding, what was really truly at stake, the surprise would not have happened if you had Black and brown staffers and also media folks working within these organizations, because they would have told you many months ago what was going to happen. You would have had an eye to what was going on the ground, because you would have had some people in the meeting. I mean, my big thing is I don't want to be the only Black person in a meeting anymore. It is 2020. Right. We're moving towards a minority white nation.
You want to be like Beyonce when she went to the meeting with Reebok. It's kind of like, no, yeah. I'm out. Nobody look like me. I'm out.
I mean, that means how could they actually understand you as a Black person if there is no one present who is Black? I mean, I just think that all white spaces, I don't understand them, because I just feel like every space that I've ever been in that was like fulsome and actually vibrant, it was diverse. It was inclusive. It had people from all around. And if you have just one kind of person,
flavor.
Yeah, it's like,
flavor.
Yeah, why people are still having all white anything. I think that if you find yourself in an all white meeting or all white space, you need to ask why. You need to raise your hand in that meeting and be like, why is this meeting all white? Because that is a problem within whatever organization you're working in.
All right, then. Hey, final question. I know they haven't announced it. All this talk. Joanne Reed's supposed to get a 7 p.m. show, whatever the heck. Might be opening on the weekend. You want it? You want to be a television show host?
I will do anything when they present me an opportunity. I don't have a plan. I mean, I think the book was a part of a plan. But if they ask me to host, yes, I'll host. Of course, and I'll be amazing.
Well, make sure you get top shelf money too. That's yes. Also key. That's also key. They want us to host, but they don't want us to host for top shelf money. I'm just saying. All right, y'all, the book. Absolutely. Y'all, the book is called The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. Zerlina, Maxwell, Zerlina, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Our Roland Marc Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, the folks at Seek.com have an incredible offer for you folks. And these are these 360-degree 4D headphones that you can use for music, you can Bluetooth, you can for gamers, all that sort of stuff. Mary Spiel's a sister. She's actually the inventor of these headphones. Phenomenal. I love the sound of these. They also have the virtual reality headsets, which allow for you to actually watch VR virtual reality videos, 360-degree videos. You just simply pop your phone right into here. And then, of course, if you you can also go like YouTube has an app as well that has a channel that deals with a lot of those VR ads. And so you can actually do all of that, folks. Check this out and pop it on. And guess what? Check out your virtual reality videos. Go to Seek.com, 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 Seek.com. Use this promo code right here, RMVIP2020, RMVIP2020 for a discount on these headphones. And then, of course, when you support them, you support this show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with Bakari Sellers of South Carolina, also a CNN contributor, talk about his new book, My Vanishing Country, a memoir. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Don't forget, we also want you to support Roland Martin Unfiltered by joining our Bring the Funk fan club, going to using Cash App, PayPal as well to support the show. All right, folks, here's my conversation with Bakari Sellers. All right, Bakari Sellers, let's talk about your book, My Vanishing Country. Why did you want to write this now?
So I'll have to be honest with you, Roland. I set out to write a political book, and no one wanted to buy it. I got turned down by nearly 20, 30 publishers because many of my colleagues were writing these books about what it meant to be in the state of Donald Trump. But no one wanted that book from my perspective. And so Tracy Sherrod, who's over the imprint at HarperCollins, Amistad imprint at HarperCollins, sat me down one day and asked me about my story. Judith Kerr and Patrick Bass gave me an opportunity. The unique thing about this book, though, is that it's evergreen. We're going to be talking about systemic injustices and systemic racism for a very long period of time until we finally address it and have those necessary conversations. And so, although I'm only 35 years old, my life has been bookended by tragedy. You see the ups and downs and the trauma in My Vanishing Country, which is out now.
Well, one of the things that that we're dealing with, I keep talking about this here, is that we're operating in a space where white folks cannot handle the changing America. Here we are right now, 23 years away from a nation being a majority of people of color. And that really is what's driving, I think, all of this. When Meghan McCain the other day talked about Obama ushering in the culture wars, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? That happened long before. And so it just made no sense whatsoever. But to me, that's really what's driving where we are today.
Well, I think that's a lot of it. It's fear. I think it's an irrational fear, but this fear people have of quote unquote being replaced. But this isn't necessarily new. I mean, many of the things that I highlight is, for example, the lack of giving people the benefit of their humanity. That's not new. I mean, it dates back to Jimmy Lee Jackson, Medgar Evers, the 16th Street Baptist Church. You fast forward, we have Breonna Taylor, we have Walter Scott, we have Ahmaud Arbery. And so when you think about these things, I believe this trauma is not new. However, the political overlay and what Stephen Miller and Donald Trump are deathly afraid of, you're absolutely correct. The browning of America, because we're starting to see Georgia, we're starting to see Arizona, even Texas. We're starting to see these places and throughout the rural South become browner day by day. And people are terrified. I think it's irrational and irrational fear, but nevertheless a fear.
Well, I think that, again, what we're talking about here is an America that was an America for whiteness. It was an America that was all about that. And so now this unease, which I think when Donald Trump zero ends on the whole issue of undocumented workers and immigration, is so when you hear these phrases, American values and morals and how all these things are changing, what they're really saying is the way white people have seen America is changing because they now have to, they have no choice but to take into account what we think because we ain't going nowhere.
Well, that's what we hope they do. And they don't look, and there's a question about a level of empathy or compassion for our neighbor. And there are questions about the humanity that many people do not afford us. And you're right. And I think that what they see and what many folks see is political power slipping away from them. And Donald Trump, whether or not he's calling Kaepernick a son of a bitch, or whether or not he is stoking these cultural wars, whether or not he's talking about Haiti, people of color, et cetera, et cetera. These are battles that he believes are the way that he can win. And that's an unfortunate commentary, and it actually proved to be true in 2016. I'm not sure it's going to be true in 2020, but I'm afraid that, I'm afraid of the answer. I dare not give my political opinion on that because I'm the same person who told you Hillary Clinton would be president of the United States.
Yeah, well, the reality is, if you look at the numbers, Hillary Clinton, but here's the piece, though. I think this is what I keep reminding people, and that is, did Hillary Clinton get more votes? Absolutely. Well, there's some huge mistakes on her campaign part, absolutely. But the only way it happened, the only way Donald Trump won is because the Republican Party instituted a massive voter suppression campaign in these critical states. And so that's what, unfortunately, not enough Democrats were understanding that. Those of us were yelling, hey, this thing is coming, this thing is coming. But it's still also, I think, dovetail into what's going on. You look at now that the Republican Party no longer has this agreement to basically not be involved, in these campaigns. So what do they plan on doing? Dropping 50,000 poll watchers. And look, they're going to be looking at black and brown people because they see us as a threat. Black and brown people are a threat to not all white people, but white way of life, because we are changing the face of this country. And the deal is they can't do anything about it except slow it down.
Well, that's true because it is coming. And I think that they're starting to see those demographic shifts. And when you look in places like Georgia and Arizona, I think Stacey Abrams actually beating Governor Kemp is one of the larger phenomenons that many people are just trying to turn the page on, but is a fact. And many people are struggling with that. And you're right. Voter suppression, I think that there is, since the age of Lester Maddox, the person who probably has been the worst when it comes to, or best from their perspective of voter suppression, was Scott Walker. In Wisconsin, the things that he did, the voter rolls, the suppression, the limiting absentee ballots, is what cost Hillary Clinton that race. And you're absolutely correct that if we don't have our eyes open, it will happen again.
But one of the things that I think is important is that we have to be extremely hardcore and brutally honest, I think, with black people. Stacey Abrams sent a tweet out today where she talked about 900,000. She lost by, 211,000 votes, whatever the number was. 900,000 eligible but unregistered black folks in Atlanta area alone did not vote.
Yep. I mean, listen, there are 12 million people who voted. And
that was 2016. I'm sorry, when Trump ran, and so that's what happened there. But there are numbers the same way in South Carolina. The number of black people who could change an election, but who eligible but not registered.
I mean, just think about the number of people who voted in 2012 but didn't vote in 2016. I mean, think about that drop off as well. And over a third of those are African American. And if you can get those people to come, if you can get those people to show up in 2020, you'll have an opportunity to win. But yeah, I mean, we have to talk about this truth that black folk got to get registered and black folk have to show up at the polls, which is why I hope Joe Biden and the DNC do a great job of getting black people involved and mobilized, not just taking that vote for granted. Black folk, super voters, are going to vote. The question is, are you going to get those super voters to work for you, do phone trees for you, have links in Jack and Jill meetings, get the Divine Nine activated, have your black churches activated? That's what it's going to take to beat this albatross, which is called Donald Trump. You served in the legislature there in South Carolina. Now you're not. Do you regret stepping out of politics? No. I learned some valuable lessons. I learned that I was nowhere near as important as I thought I was. I'm able to be learn how to be a good husband and a good father. I'm going back into politics as soon as that time is right. Hopefully running for United States Congress in that 6th congressional district, currently occupied by our good friend Jim Clyburn. So that's my goal. That's my trajectory. And so no, I'm not. I ran for lieutenant governor. In 2014, before there was a Stacey Abrams and before there was an Andrew Gillum, I was trying to chip away at that glass. Before there was a Jamie Harrison, which I hope can shatter that glass. We got 42% of the vote, and we chipped that glass, and it didn't shatter. And hopefully, we set the table for others to come behind and do that. Now, when you talk about that, I mean, look at how Harrison is running against Lindsey Graham. You look at the fact that, I mean, look, normally in South Carolina, it's a shoe-in for a Republican to win. Now, granted, we're talking about early polls, but I do believe that what Donald Trump has also done, he has exposed the hypocrisy of Republicans who have no integrity, no morals, no values, no principles, and I think people are now responding to that. So it's a little hard now to try to run on morals, values, and principles when that's the guy who you've given your soul over to. And I think that, and I'm not the person who has the audacity to talk about this. You'll have to have another guest on to talk about this. But what we're starting to see is white people, and college-educated white women in particular, flee the Republican Party. We saw that in 2018. We saw that actually in our Democratic primary. For the first time in a very long period of time, the Democratic primary in South Carolina back in January or February 3rd, was 50-50. It was 50% white, 50% black. It's usually 61%, 62% African American. It wasn't the case then because there were so many voters who were tired of Donald Trump, who wanted to play a role in the Democratic primary process. Those white voters voted for Joe Biden. And so I think especially in these suburban areas in Pennsylvania and a lot of these swing states, Virginia, et cetera, you're going to see a lot of white college-educated women come back to the Democratic Party. Well, and bottom line is when we talk about the notion of educated versus uneducated, I think the numbers bear out even those who support Donald Trump. The thing I still think that is important, though, is that Democrats bet not make this mistake. They bet not just all of a sudden do a tilt to the suburban educated voters and ignore your hardcore base. Because your hardcore base don't turn out, it don't matter what they do in the suburbs. I write about that. I mean, for far too long, the Democrats and Republicans alike think that rural working class means white folk, and they need to start talking to the base, and they have to start talking message to black men. See, what happens with black men, not only do you have that level of misogyny that creeped in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, but you also had a message void. And because no one else was talking to black men, no matter how asinine and ignorant Donald Trump's message was, he was the only person having discussions with black male voters. We have to fix that this go around and at least message for black male voters so that they don't choose. A lot of them didn't choose Hillary or Donald Trump. A lot of them chose the couch. And we have to make sure that we give them a better option this time.
Yeah, I mean, that was a 9-point gap between black men and black women who voted for Obama over Romney in 2012. And number was 13 points with Trump over Hillary Clinton. The White House, I mean, they've told me point blank, they think that they can get 15 to 18, as much as 20% of the black male vote. That's why they're targeting that. But I still think, to your point about rural voters, I mean, the reality is media plays a role in that too. And that is, every time you see or hear this idea of the heartland, I keep trying to tell these white folks in media, which is also part of the problem, because you got too many white executives. You have C-suites in media that looks like corporate America in the sense that we're non-existent. Oh, sure, having black people on the air is one thing, in executive suites is another thing. And the part of the problem is that when you have the messaging, when they say, oh, the middle of the country, let's see, the middle of the country is Missouri. You think St. Louis doesn't exist? The middle of the country is Illinois. Chicago doesn't exist. The middle of the country is Minnesota. What? Minneapolis, St. Paul doesn't exist. It's black people in all these places, but the messaging that goes out when they throw those phrases out, what they're really saying are white people.
Yes. And one of the things that I wanted to do in My Vanishing Country is give a voice to all of these people who they're not voiceless, but they just have gone unheard. And it's as if a whole segment of the population doesn't exist in our political discourse. And don't just leave it in C-suites, and don't leave it with the Republican Party. This is a Democratic problem as well, who simply believe that these folk are represented and are white Americans. No, there are working class black folk every day. There are rural black folk every day, and we have to start tackling those injustices, many of which we see, unfortunately, throughout this pandemic. We've ripped the Band-Aid off this ugly head of racism in this country, and if you can't see the systemic injustices now, you're just blind to that fact or willfully ignorant.
Well, I look at the Hillbilly Elegy, a perfect example. I mean, that whole thing was, oh my goodness, he's writing about all these white people, and I'm going, you know, there are black people who are in rural Georgia. There are black people in rural Tennessee, rural Mississippi, rural Alabama, rural Florida, rural South Carolina, rural North Carolina. And so what ends up happening is it sets up this conversation of Republicans go after rural voters, meaning white. Democrats go after urban voters, meaning black. And then going, no, I need to appeal to folks who are in a city and rural, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And again, media falls right into the trap because the face is who they put out there. Look, when Trump was talking about saving those jobs with Carrier, which was a lie, when he first came in, 50% of those Carrier workers were black people.
Yes.
Indiana.
And I know, and we have to begin to give those people a voice and lift those people up, which is why I'm coming and talking to you about My Vanishing Country, because we have to utilize the platforms that we have in order to make sure these people have voices and messaging. Because to get to the gist of it, Roland, I have 16-month-old twins. You probably hear them running around in the background, so I apologize. But those 16-month-old twins don't deserve to grow up in a country where Donald Trump is president of the United States. They don't deserve that. And so what we have to do is make sure that we're activating our base, that we're doing the things necessary. And we have to overcome. I mean, we're just going to have to overcome and struggle through and fight through the voter suppression that's going to be there. And the only way we can do that is if we pay attention to the base of the party, if we pay attention to black women, give them more than just a head nod and a thank you, actually give them a seat at the table. And also the same with black men, making sure we message for them. That's the only way that this is going to work. If not, we're going to be sitting at home in January, on a cold January, probably wet day in D.C., watching Donald Trump get sworn in for another 4 years.
I think when one of the things that you lay out again is the tale of two worlds. I go back to the Kerner Commission report, 1968. There's America, one white, one black. And that continue. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody. You can show me all of these polls and everything. The reality is this here. Black people simply see this country different from white people. And if you don't take that into account, then you fail to understand how to talk to black people. And so you go through that when you talk about whether going to Morehouse, when you talk about going to South Carolina, all of that. Look, we just see this country differently.
And not only do we see it differently, but we experience different traumas. Now, my trauma may not be your trauma, but you're going to have to understand and empathize with my trauma. That's the only way we can persevere. When you think about the post-traumatic slave syndrome, when you think about, somebody like myself whose father went to prison, whose father was shot, having a felony for nearly 20 years after you were arrested and shot for protesting segregation, where all the officers were found not guilty. You think about that trauma. You think about somebody like myself who, when I talked about this in the book, my wife almost died giving childbirth. This is something that African-American women deal with on a daily basis. They're 4 times more likely to die than their peers. You think about Clemente Pinckney, who was a friend of mine, who had a Bible study and allowed what black folk do, show that level of compassion, had a white boy walk in that church they didn't even know from Adam, sat down beside him for the whole service, and after an hour when they bent over to pray, he opened fire with a 9mm. And so when you think about all of this trauma, that is the experience of being black in this country. And when people read this book, Roland, I want black folk to have a sense of pride, and I want white folk who read it to get a sense of understanding. And so that way we can have these difficult conversations about race that we have to where we're going to heal.
But can white people understand? Dr. King talked about this in his book, Chaos or Community. Can white people have an understanding as long as they are in denial about the role that they, as well as their ancestors, have played? See, I think part of the issue here, you talked about being 35, what you've seen in your years. I think part of the biggest problem here is that too many white Americans want to isolate where we are. And I'm going to use Meghan McCain as an example. They want to isolate the world to only the years in which they've been living. and I think you cannot, and you talked about COVID, you cannot talk about coronavirus and who it is hitting unless you deal with the centuries that come beforehand. And I think that seems to be the greatest struggle in this country, getting white people to move beyond the years they've been alive.
So I think you can have understanding. I think what you're talking about is atonement, and I don't think they can get to the level of atonement.
You know what? I ain't even asking for atonement. How about you just read? How about you actually go, oh, damn, that actually happened.
I'm giving you something to read. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So they can start. I think that's the start. But, we live in a country now where people only seek out opinions that reinforce their own. We live in silos, and we have to chip away at that. So it doesn't matter what there is out there to read. I mean, if someone like a Meghan McCain is only watching herself in Fox News and on Facebook groups that reinforce that very nature, that is what's going to happen. So we have to begin to break out of that cycle. And I can't make people break out of that cycle, but what we can do is, for those who do, those messengers who do, provide them with resources to take back to their respective communities.
Also, I think we have to be, part of our job also, and I've been doing media since I was 14 years old. This is what I chose to do, to be a journalist. This is also where we have to be as honest and hardcore about it as well. I think one of the biggest things that we have done is that, and it's actually been a result of white supremacy, is that we've always had to take into account their feelings. And so we sort of couch things in a certain way. I just think we're at a point now with a generation of people who are like, you know what? Damn your feelings. This just needs to be said the way it needs to be said. And if your feelings get hurt, well, then suck it up. But at some point, it has to be said, because we tried the other way of just being nice about it and let me qualify this. I don't mean disrespect. I don't mean all sort of stuff. Where it's like, no, we just got to go ahead and say some stuff.
And you know what? People respect you more for being unapologetically black and unapologetically you. And I have I have a sit down with TD Jakes coming out, and TD Jakes is a spiritual father for me. He calls me at 11:45 at night. We talk. I love Bishop Jakes. He gets me through a lot of moments when I'm down. And he brought up a good point. He said, "You can teach us, calculus. You can teach us German. You can teach us English. You can teach us science, but you can't teach us blackness." And there comes a point in time when, we have to speak our truth and be unapologetic about it. And I promise you, Roland, every day that I'm on TV, that's what I'm doing. Every platform that I have, that's what I'm doing. In this book, that's what I'm doing. And so there are some hard truths that people are going to have to realize, because I'm just pushing and challenging not only ourselves, but I'm challenging this country to be a more perfect union. And that, I think, is the only way that we can live. Those people who want to kowtow and tiptoe around issues, I don't have the bandwidth or the time. I need somebody who's going to be honest and not give, not really care about my feelings.
You spoke of Emmanuel AME, and one of the things that just drove me crazy out of that was all we heard was, oh my goodness, just look at the forgiveness of the people. Just the forgiveness. Look, you know what? One of the things I do appreciate was what's happening after Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. Folks are like, you know what? We're not about to have that conversation. Now, I'm a Christian. I totally understand that, and I'm not dissing anyone who did it. The problem for me is that when tragedy happens, when these traumatic situations happen to black people, white America wants us to immediately move to forgiveness.
Yes.
They still pissed with 9/11. They still pissed with the embassy getting overthrown in Tehran in 1979.
And rightfully so. And the amazing part about this discussion is that black folk are always put in a position where we have to forgive. There never has to be any atonement, but we're just supposed to forgive. And, my generation ain't about that. And to be completely honest, there was a certain element of my dad's generation. My dad was a member of SNCC. Them boys weren't forgiven either.
Right.
Marion Barry, Julian Bond, Stokely, James Foreman, them boys weren't forgiven either. Black Panthers were not forgiving either. Even we have whitewashed the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. He was a radical revolutionary, and he wasn't as forgiving either. A good Christian man, a great Baptist minister. But he believed that there was that forgiveness required some exchange. And I'm with you. In my book, I talk about my friend Malcolm Graham, whose sister Cynthia Hurd was murdered in the church. And we have conversations all the time about how other people forgave. And I'm simply not that far along on my Christian journey where I was able to forgive Dylan Roof for taking away Clemente from his family, his daughters, that church, that community. And I'm selfish in that, I know, and I have to let that go. I'm just not there yet.
I remember, when Nikki Haley gave her sort of revised perspective on Dylan Roof and the Confederate flag, you get a lot of heat from folks on social media for I won't say defending her, but offering a perspective. When I remember she was at the NBA All-Star game and was on a panel and made some comments there as well, and I was sitting there seething because what bothered me was this whole deal of how she worked to bring the flag down. And the reason I am still bothered by that is because black blood brought the flag down.
And we check Nikki Haley on that often. I think she knows we will, because she knows the value of those lives that were lost. And the irony about that, Roland, in a much larger perspective, is that any ounce of political change we've ever had in this country, anytime black folks
black blood
has been black blood.
Right.
So that's first. The second thing, though, is that Nikki Haley had to display some ounce of courage in order to get that flag down politically. Now, I think she takes a great deal of credit for that. But that flag still had to come down, even after that blood was shed. And those phone calls that she made, that flag, to be completely honest with you, it goes back, and this is more inside baseball than people want to know. But if Jim DeMint had not retired and Nikki Haley had not appointed Tim Scott, that flag would have never come down. If those senators were Lindsey Graham and Jim DeMint, that flag would still be there today. Trust me on that. And there was some fortune and there was some fortitude to get that down. There was still, there was an all-night debate about that flag. There were still votes against taking that flag down.
Oh yeah. But I just think that, again, for me, when I hand out courage awards, I hand them out when you did it in the face of opposition, But worry it not. And this is the thing for me, and I can go down to you in our history, so many things. If black blood, look, we talk about the Fair Housing Act of 1968.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody forgets. King gets, that thing was filibustered for 3 years, almost 3 years. King gets, it was filibustered, it was broken in the Senate, it was still filibustered in the House. King gets killed on April 4th. LBJ sends a letter to the House the next day saying, let's honor Dr. King and his life's work by finally passing this bill. It's signed into law 9 days later. That bill only gets signed because King is murdered.
Yep. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, the flag doesn't come down if 9 people don't die. We're speaking the same language. I'm just talking about from the perspective of pure politics. That there had to be somebody to do that. And none of the white boys took the lead on that. The attorney general couldn't be found. The lieutenant governor couldn't be found. The speaker of the House was there, hee-hawing. So somebody had to take the leadership role. And I'm not saying she deserves a holiday. I'm just acknowledging what I knew to be the reality of the time. But I do give that black blood is something that it doesn't come out of the soil of our great state.
And the reason I'm bringing that up, because I think when you talk about, acknowledging and owning up to where we are and where we're trying to go. I think what black people are constantly saying to white America is, don't wait for us to die to do what's right.
Amen. Now, we can just take up an offering and go home on this one, because that is it. That is the point. That it should not take our death, even our deaths on camera, for you to do what's right, for you to have outrage, for you to have some type of empathy or compassion, for you to have understanding. We shouldn't have to be lynched on camera. We shouldn't have to be shot in churches. We shouldn't have to be shot in the back by law enforcement. And thank God somebody was videotaping that. And so My Vanishing Country goes through all of those things. We shouldn't have to live in food deserts. We shouldn't have to go to school in corridors of shame. We shouldn't have to live in states that didn't expand Medicaid, so hospitals are closing. We shouldn't have to drink dirty water or breathe dirty air. This is the condition and plight and the trauma of being black in this country, and we should not have to do these things. I should not have to beg for dignity from this country. And so My Vanishing Country is a love story, but it's also a fist in the air saying, I'm tired of begging for this, watching my country vanish. These are the things I want, and at the end of the day, I want my children to be free.
I want to talk about just a couple of more questions, and obviously we're living right now in a moment where you have somebody who occupies the White House. I do not call him president because he doesn't respect the office of president, but he simply occupies the office of president. And in your book, you write about, of course, getting that phone call where Obama sought your endorsement. One of the things that we consistently hear from a lot of folks is that there was 8 years of Obama, and what really, how did black people really benefit? Your thoughts on that when you hear that?
So you won't find a bigger proponent of 44 than myself. I'm a huge cheerleader, huge fan of 44. I am very critical on a couple of things. One, I'm very critical on his stance in Syria. If you draw a red line, you better keep your red line. And the other thing is, I think he failed HBCUs. And I say that with a heavy heart. I think that HBCUs are faring a lot worse under Donald Trump, but I think they could have fared better under Barack Obama if he had that cultural understanding of the value and necessity of HBCUs. And I just think it was culturally something he was not able to fathom or comprehend or necessarily give as much to as he could have or should have. I think when people qualify or quantify Barack Obama's meaning is something that doesn't necessarily come down in how many pieces of legislation was passed. I think Barack Obama's meaning actually can be deduced from that picture of Jacob Philadelphia, who is a young black man in his office, this casket sharp with the white shirt on and black slacks. And he asked Barack Obama, how does his hair feel? Does your hair feel like mine? And Barack Obama leans over and Jacob reaches up. I think that encapsulates his meaning. Policy-wise, the headwinds and the lack of talent that Barack Obama, for the latter part of his tenure in D.C. was like Michael Jordan from '84 to 1990, and I guess in this scenario, Mitch McConnell's probably the Detroit Pistons. He didn't have much help. Every midterm, 2010. In 2014, we didn't send him a Congress to help him. And so no matter how talented he wasn't able to overcome those things. And so that is the way that I look at it. I think people discount the headwinds that he faced. There was a meeting on the night he got inaugurated. You know about that, where they stated that they were going to make sure that he failed. He was going to be a one-term president. He wasn't, but they definitely limited the things he could do in terms of progressive politics.
I do have to ask you this here. I think it's hilarious where you talk about a campaign event where it was you, Chris Tucker, Kerry Washington, Usher, and then with Senator Obama, Usher didn't know what to say, and you said, just mention God and praise black women. It's sort of like the comedian who's struggling on stage when he went, boy, look at the fine ladies in the house. I mean, at the end of the day, you can use that line anytime.
I gave it to, I thought I was funny by then because we had been chilling with Chris Tucker for a long time and he is hilarious. And we went out there and the first things that Usher said was, praise God, I love all the beautiful black women. And you should have seen our faces. We were all like, oh no, we were just joking. We were just joking, Usher. But it was a great moment. Me, Usher, Chris Tucker, Kerry Washington with Barack Obama. It is a picture that people do not believe until I show it to them. In little Orangeburg, South Carolina, Roland. Orangeburg, South Carolina.
That was quite interesting. But again, the line always works. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all you got to do. I mean, if you struggling, just pivot.
Pivot. Praise God. I love all the beautiful black women here. Crowd goes crazy.
That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. Last question for you. I ask all authors this, even people who write books, memoirs or biographies about themselves, and that is there's always a wow moment when somebody's either doing research, when they're writing, when they remember something, and then they go, wow, I completely forgot about that. So what was your wow moment in writing this book?
It was the most powerful line in the book, I believe. And, you know, so there are two wow moments. The first wow moment was just overcoming and coming through. I write in the afterword about my daughter, Sadie, getting a transplant. I had already finished the book, and Sadie received her transplant September 1st. And so that was when you read it and look back at it, that was a wow, we overcame this. But a wow moment in terms of just thinking back on the stories and the legacy of my father. My father used to always tell us this. He used to always say, heroes walk among us. Because my father didn't want me to just believe that it was Martin, Malcolm, Rosa, and John Lewis. My father really wanted us to pay tribute with our lives to Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer. He wanted me to love and respect and adore Marion Barry and Julian Bond, which I did. And so heroes walk among us. For me, when I put it on paper, I was like, wow, my dad is really dope. My mom is amazing. And I have to carry that torch.
I thought that last question, this is the last question. Do Amazon not deliver clippers? What's up with the Jesus and his disciple look?
First of all, I am looking like a sexy Pendergrass, a young Marc.
No, you're looking like one of his disciples. And you ain't got a hoodie on. I think you got a tunic on. And you probably got some sandals with a staff. What's up?
I'm just getting in touch with myself. I shaped it up for you, though, Roland. I shaped it up.
You shaped it up?
I'm looking handsome. I want you to know that your female viewers are really enjoying this new look on myself. I'm just telling you.
Oh, they are? Oh, okay.
They are.
Okay. All right, just checking. But I'm just saying, Amazon still delivers. I mean, Prime delivers in 24, 48 hours.
Can I say something to you? Can I just say thank you, man? Because, you know, coming on Black platforms is something that I wanted to be intentional about and purposeful about in promoting this book, and you didn't have to say yes. But you did, and I am forever indebted and forever grateful. And I didn't want to leave, and do not cut this out. I want your viewers to all see that I just want to say thank you for the example you set in everything you do.
I appreciate it. Folks, the book is My Vanishing Country, a memoir by Bakari Sellers. And y'all notice he didn't put his disciples look on the cover. He chose to go with the kid look. So if you're going to try to sell a book, two things. Either you put a woman on it or you put a kid. So the only thing he could have sold more copies if he put a picture with him and his mama on the cover in order to sell books. I'm just saying. I mean, don't think for a second. I don't know what the deal is, especially since you're trying to claim sexy Pendergrass. I can't get the words out of my mouth. Bakari Sellers, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother. Have a great day.
All right, take care. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks. Legendary comedian George Wallace has released a new book title. It's called Bullwit and Whatnot, the online ramblings of George Wallace. That's pretty much what George does a lot. The book focuses on his Twitter rants. Trust me, and it's not just his Twitter rants. He will actually use these rants in a text message. I have been on the receiving end of many of them. Joining me now is the great man himself, George Wallace. What up, George?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am doing very well. I'm here in Atlanta. How are you, Roland?
Well, hell, I'm in Atlanta. They didn't tell me you wouldn't be in Atlanta. We should have done the interview together. Well, then again, now, you real old, so COVID might affect you.
I'm leaving this house. I am not leaving this house. I've been here since March 14. I ain't going nowhere. You understand me? Nobody comes here. I go nowhere. I'm scared. And I don't think the people in Atlanta got the message. Have you seen how many people running around here without a mask?
Hey, George, look, I'm serious. First of all, I got 2 masks. I even wear the goggles. And what I don't quite understand, George, do people not get what I call nonverbal messages? What I mean by that is when they ask step close, I back up. And I back up more. And I'm like, why you keep moving forward? Back your ass up. Social distance.
You're like me. Speaking of social distance, I sent you a photo. Do you have me on top of the roof? Do you have that photo of me on top of the roof?
Yeah, I sent that. Hold on one second, y'all. Let me airdrop this to my iPad so I can show y'all this whole crazy. I told y'all the stuff George sent me. Y'all thought I was lying. Y'all, George, let me airdrop this photo to my iPad right now so I can show y'all. Anthony, let's get ready to switch this for some y'all. I'm telling you, George. I'm gonna go ahead and put it up. For some reason, it's I'm telling y'all, George sent me stuff, and he sent me this photo talking about he on top of the roof. I said, y'all, this man ain't got no doggone sense. Talking about he practices social distancing. Let me see if I can pull this thing up. So George, you ain't left home at all, huh?
Listen to me.
You ain't left home at all.
Roland, my daughter stopped by to see me the other day. I live on the top floor, right? That's my balcony. I'm waving at her ass. I told her that's the closest she's gonna get. Keep moving. Keep moving. Social distancing. That's me waving at her from the 25th
this is the
floor.
photo George. Y'all, this is the photo George sent me. So George, that's you. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I. Yeah, that looked like you.
That's me waving at my daughter. She wanna stop. She's in the parking lot across the street. And I said,
your daughter.
Hello. Keep moving.
That's the closest she could get.
Keep moving. Social distancing. Keep moving. Listen, I'm so concerned about this, Roland. I'm trying to stay 6 feet away from myself. From me. I don't trust nobody, okay? I moved the mirror out of my bathroom because it was too close to me. I'm crazy.
So George, so this book is about your Twitter rants. When did you join Twitter? How long you been on Twitter?
In 2011 or 2009. The reason I did it, I didn't want to join because I'm thinking, now why would I give away my jokes for free? Okay. And plus, this is a different type George Wallace humor. You got to get these jokes in 100 and 40 characters. Now it's 280, okay, so I'm doing better now. But it's just little online ramblings of me talking about things I would do. Today I had a shout out to the top 5 lots in the world. You know, you got your play lot, you got your sand lot, you got Sir Lancelot, and somebody wrote in, I love the reply. Somebody, how about Charlotte? So it's so much fun. That's what I do. It's just online ramblings on stupid stuff I would do, because I'll straight up, like I'll eat cupcakes out of a pan and pancakes out of a cup, because I do stupid stuff like that. I don't play by the rules, Roland. I don't play by the rules. Well,
I am with you.
Roland, I will eat an English muffin in France and French toast while I'm in England. I don't care, but it's called bull twit, not bull wit, bull twit.
Oh, bull twit. I'm sorry, my bad. I could, I wasn't quite sure. The bull twit.
Roland, I couldn't say what I wanted to say. Bull twit, bull twit. You get it? Bull twit. That's what it's all about, and it's online.
Yes, George.
Listen to me. It's online. This is the only book I have. I don't even have it yet. You should have one coming, and it's $19.95, and you get this with GeorgeWallace.net. Roland, George Wallace, I be thinking. I did not go to Amazon.com. They take half your money. I want you and everybody in your family to go to GeorgeWallace.net, okay? GeorgeWallace.net. It makes a great book for Christmas gifts. And it's only $19.99, and it's a quality book.
You want all the money. So are you personally mailing them out yourself? Because see, that means you got to go to the post office, George.
At my office. I'm in Atlanta, but my office, my fulfillment center is in Las Vegas at my office. But it's a quality book. The quality of the book is actually better than the jokes. That's how good this book is. Look at that, a glossy book. You can enjoy this. And there's so many funny things in here. And the foreword is written by my funny friend, Pat Oswalt. I did get into trouble. My best friend, Jerry Seinfeld, wanted to know why did he not write the foreword of the book. Well, Pat Oswalt loves my tweets, and I said, okay, you write it. And Seinfeld, some people don't know talking about this, because a lot of people don't know that's my best friend for 45 years. A lot of people don't know that I'm actually the real George on Seinfeld. Did you know that, Roland?
Yes, I knew that. George, you forgot you and I sat down for a one-on-one interview when we were in Los Angeles before the Image Awards.
That's right. Yeah, I was his roommate for 13 years. I'm Seinfeld's roommate for 13 years. I was best man in his wedding, and I'm the father of his kids. So people need to know that. So, but what we're talking about today is book. You got one already?
Look, I'm going to get a book. I got my panel here, Teresa, Julian, Joseph. I know they got some questions for you. They get to ask one question. And so I'll first start off with, let's see, we'll go with the person who is closest to you in age. So, Julian, you get to ask George the question first.
Wait. What do you mean the closest to my age? Now, Roland, you know for a fact, I started doing comedy in 1883. So that's how long I've been doing comedy. Okay, young lady, go ahead.
Well, so we got close enough. But I love your Roland ain't right, and neither are you. But where does your humor come from? What makes you make us crack it up? I cracked up through the whole conversation with you and Roland. Where does your humor come from?
It's just funny because, I don't know. I'm just so blessed, I don't want to crack up here, but I'm the most blessed person in the world. God gave me a passion to tell jokes and make people happy. I wanted to be a comedian since I was 6 years old, and God has blessed me, and I'm going to choke up right now because all I do every night, I come out on stage, the place is full, and all I do is just lie. I just lie. I just love telling lies. I just thank God. I ask God every night, let me be the greatest BSer in the world. I want to be the greatest BSer in the world. But right now, Donald Trump is kicking my ass in the bullshit department. You understand what I'm saying? So I try to come up with humor. I wrote a letter the other day. I told Donald Trump, please don't come to Georgia. We already have a virus here. We got 19. We can't deal with 45. Do not come to Georgia. But he came down here with his...
Thank you for making me laugh for the last 15 minutes.
Well, what you need to do is get this book, George Wallace. It's called Bull Twit and Whatnot. And Roland, it tells you about me growing up here in Atlanta. And I was so poor We were so poor we could only listen to the Pips. We never knew that was a Gladys. We never knew about Gladys until about 10 years ago. That's how poor we were. No, you laugh if you want to. Let me tell you something. This is true. We used to watch Sons. We never knew about Sanford. We didn't know. Listen, I knew Red Fox, but I didn't know he was Sanford. Bro, this stuff is true I'm making up. This stuff is true. People, let me tell you something. Bro, when we were so poor, people used to break into our house and they go, oh my God. And they would bring us furniture. They would bring us. There is something wrong with me. You got to get a copy of this book. Get it before Christmas. It goes under your tree. I'm sorry. I'll stop talking. Go ahead.
You're right. There is something wrong with you. Next question goes to Joseph Williams.
I hear you got a book. You have a book coming out. Is that right?
Didn't I just tell you I got a book called Bullshit? Are you watching the show or not? That's some bullshit right there. Go online. You know what? People are coming on. I just want you to listen. A lot of people don't know about the Twitter language. It's a different language. So it's a different type of humor from George Wallace. But it's called Bull Twit, and it's so great. GeorgeWallace.net. Go online right now. I'm getting so many. I think I'm already sold out before. The book hasn't even been released yet. But go online. If it crashes, you go back. It's a great Christmas gift. It's a quality, very expensive book. It's only $19.95. But if you buy 5, I charge you $120 just for the hell of it.
Now, are you still performing? Where are you performing these days? Are you doing online stuff? Are you in club? I mean, what's going on? I mean, how are you getting it out there?
It's Twitter. Twitter's on every day. Do you tweet? It's on Twitter every day. Go to Twitter right now at Mr. George Wallace. It's on Twitter. I was voted. There's something wrong with you asking me a question like that. Listen, I was voted top funniest 25 tweeters in the world by Rolling Stone magazine. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
The number one funniest
No, we didn't know that.
I was voted the number one funniest tweeter by Playboy magazine. I didn't even know they were still in business, but I was voted. Bull twit.
Teresa. Teresa is the youngest person on the panel, George. George, she one of the, I think, Teresa, you call yourself a millennial or a Gen Z?
I'm a millennial, okay? I'm not that young.
Okay, I can't, George, I can't stand millennials or Gen Z, so it don't matter. So Teresa, go ahead with your question.
Hey, Roland, they are different, aren't they? They just do stupid stuff. I'm at McDonald's the other day, and I said, can I get a hamburger? The idiot Gen Z says, you want cheese on that? I said, you stupid nut, did I order a cheeseburger? I ordered a hamburger, and I want ham on it. There's something wrong with them, Roland. There's something wrong, but I should call in once a week. I got so much to talk about, so much to talk. And guess what else happened to me? I go to church. I'm trying to become I want to stay a Christian comedian because I don't cuss a lot, right? But I want to cuss. And I wrote a joke about, I guess a year ago, I met a guy named Waka Flocka Flame. Oh, yeah. Waka Flocka Flame. That's it's not cussing, but it's close enough, isn't it, Roland? Roland, everybody listen to me and just say Waka Flocka. Waka Flocka.
Waka Flocka.
Hey, Roland, I'm at church yesterday. I
wish a Waka Flocka would.
That's what I said.
I wish a Waka Flocka would.
Listen to me, Roland. I was in church yesterday, and the bishop walked up in the pulpit. I said, look at this Waka Flocka walking up.
See that again is a Flocka Buffa?
And yesterday was the first Sunday. It's you can go to church in the parking lot now. And they had communion. Ooh, that's some good service. You can have real wine in your car. Real wine. And who the hell come up with grape juice for communion? Grape juice. What did Jesus do, Roland? You know the Bible. Your wife knows the Bible. Jesus turned water into wine. Didn't turn it into no grape juice.
Right.
That's what happened. They were sitting there eating many years ago. Jesus and his 12 disciples. They were sitting there, apostles. They were sitting there eating. Jesus said, who brought this grape juice? Who brought this grape juice in there? He said, this is the Last Supper.
You are hilarious.
Teresa, what's your question for George?
Question.
Teresa, what's your question for George?
You know what? I don't have a question for George. All I'm going to say is I'm going to go get the book. I'm going to go, educate my fellow millennials. We're going to laugh. We're going to tweet. And this will be a good book that'll be on the back of my shelf for my new book spotlight. So thank you.
I would like to be on your show, too. It's called BullTwitGeorgeWallace.net. Now, a lot of people buying both books. A lot of people are still buying this book right here, Laugh It Off. So it's pretty good. I'm so blessed. But Bull Twit is the next book, and there's more Bull Twit where that came from. I talk Bull Twit all day.
I think I do, too. So I'm going to get the book.
You get that book, okay? Because I don't play by the rules. You know what, Roland? I pick my teeth with an ice pick, and I pick ice with a toothpick because I don't play by the rules. You see, I'm different. I'm different. I'll take a refrigerator magnet. Go ahead.
Well, I gotta ask you, George. You live in Georgia. I gotta hear what you got to say about that robot Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue running against John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock.
Listen, I'm the first one 3 years ago. I told everybody in Georgia, vote your Ossoff for John Ossoff. Vote your Ossoff for John Ossoff. I started that 2 years ago. Listen, Kelly last night in that debate, I wish I could have been on. I mean, I would have said, turn your face to the camera and tell the people again, lie to them once again. You know me. You know I'm a minister, and you say I'm a thug, and I denounce police, defund the police. You know what I'm trying to say. I would have said, turn to the camera and lie once again. Yeah, we know. You said three times that I'm a thug. Now they'll turn to you, and you know I'm not a thug. I'm a minister. I'm a person of the people. You just keep lying, okay? And you're not one of us. Everybody in Georgia, you need to know this lady has over $500 million, and she ain't one of us. Damn!
That would have worked.
You better believe it. I want to tell her, look in the camera and lie to the people. I said, Kelly, look in the people. Look in the camera. Now, see, America, you're not only going to represent Georgia, but you represent America. She's lying to you right here on camera. That's what you want in Washington, D.C.? Bam, come on. And then I would have said to her,
George.
Yes, sir.
Now, George, you know a black man can't get that aggressive with a white woman in Georgia?
Well, then he could have said to her, I just forgot a good joke. Can you believe that? I'm getting older. Where's my Prevagen? I need Prevagen. I need some Prevagen. You know, because I'm starting to forget stuff. Next question. Anybody else?
I gotta ask you this here, George. I gotta ask this, George. So they're saying that Trump is gonna run again in 2024.
Trump is a con man. Trump is just taking these people's money. He's raised over $207 million. He's just taking their money. He may not even be around here. Trump, he keep talking, and he calls it the China virus. We should call it the Trump mumps. That's what it is. Listen to me. He will not run in 2004. We're going to be just fine. Biden's going to be fine. America is good already. We feel good already, don't we? Look at me. I'm wearing this is not a ugly sweater. This is just one of my this is just one of my regular sweaters I wear every day. But it's not as ugly as your other sweaters.
All right, George. So George, all right. So I want you to imagine you're shooting a commercial, and you're trying to tell people to vote for John Ossoff, Raphael Warnock. And so let's just say it's a 30-second commercial. I'm going to time you. I'm going to see how good you are. We'll see how good you are with this here. So somebody out there, we know, of course, today's the last day to register to vote. We know, of course, early voting starts next on December 14th, next Monday. And so, all right. So let's say this is a George Wallace political commercial that would run on television. 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. This is Crazy George Wallace, and I want you to know I'm here. I'm a fellow Georgian, and I'm all about progress. And I tell you what, always go with youth. Always go with the youth, people that you can associate with. John Ossoff, as I say, vote to Ossoff or John Ossoff. This guy is so smart. You heard him yesterday debate. Reverend Warnock, a good friend of mine, a minister. You know he's not a thug. He does not want to defund the police officers. He's telling the truth. So you need to get out and vote because your vote is powerful. You can vote. People from America, you still can vote with your dollar. So do me a favor. Call in right now. Go to georgiasenate.com. Vote. Help us change America. And that's right. We can change America. I'm George Wallace. I love you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Let's do this.
Bam.
That was nice. That was a 51-second, 30-second commercial. So way to go.
That was not 51 seconds.
You're right. It was 52 seconds. 52:01. That's what it was.
Hello, everybody. This is George Wallace. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go vote on January 5. Let me do it over. Okay, how about that? That's 5. That's 10 seconds. Go ahead. Okay.
All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello once again, everybody. It's me, Crazy George Wallace, and you know me, I'm all about happiness, and that's what I want you to be, a proud Georgian. I'm born and raised here in Atlanta. We call it Wakanda. You know there's so many black people here. It's so many black people here in Atlanta. Africans get off the airplane, they go, whoa! And it's not only about black people, it's just about good people. All the people in the rural counties, in the red counties, we're for everybody. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm for Georgians. I'm for everybody. So vote on January 5 for Warnock and Ossoff. It's Ossoff. Get your ass off your butt and go vote.
Get off your butt.
4307, but I'll take it. George, what's the name of the book?
Hey, Roland, take 3. Hello, everybody.
All right, last one. Third time is going to be a charm. All right, here we go.
No.
3, 2.
Bull twit. Okay, 3, 2, go ahead. Hello, everybody. This is me, George Wallace. Have you had enough bull twit? Have you had enough bull twit in your life? This is me, George Wallace, telling you how you can make a change in America. You need to get out and vote, especially here in Georgia. You can make a change. January 5 is your day to vote, especially the young people out there and all you people in Clayton County. 80,000 black people did not vote for Clayton County. You can make a difference. You know you can do that. Let's make a change. Come on, everybody, let's get happy. I'm George Wallace. I love you. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. 30 seconds, bam.
Boom! 29.78 seconds. I told you, third time is a charm. George Wallace, way to go. Tell everybody you said the name of your book more. You said the name of your book today more times than Kelly Loeffler said radical liberal Warnock. So tell everybody the name of the book where they can buy it.
Look at her. She's just a big liar. Oh man, I wish I had been there. But I love you. Hey, Roland, and all those other people in the studio, make sure you keep laughing, because when you stop laughing, you stop living, okay? I can't wait to go back to work. I haven't worked since March 14, but I can't wait to get back out there.
All right, George Wallace, my man, always good to chat with you. Glad you were on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and we're gonna sell some copies of that book and try and make it a bestseller.
Bulltwit.net. Bulltwit.net, and I'm doing it on my own. Like I said, Amazon.com takes all your money. This book here sold over 10,000 copies through me, so I'm doing it again. I'm my own man. I do it my way, okay?
I feel you. Well, hey, George, I know. That's same for my show. It's me, independent, and that's how we do it.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to get in the studio live with you. Are you really in Atlanta?
Yes, I'm in Atlanta. I'll text you the address. I've been in Atlanta since Thursday. I go back tomorrow, but I'm back here next week. So we'll actually be in Atlanta for all through January 5th.
Well, that's so good. I hope you're having fun in Atlanta. If you can't laugh in Atlanta, you can't laugh anywhere. We got a place in Atlanta called College Park. You ever heard of it?
Of course.
No college and no park. I don't know. There's something wrong with these people in Atlanta. Hey, Roland. We got 2 birds in Atlanta can't fly. We got the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta Hawks. They can't fly at all. I call them the Chick-fil-A.
George Wallace,
I call them the Chick-fil-A Falcons. You know why? They both are closed on Sunday.
Speaking of Chick-fil-A.
Oh, you're going to get us in trouble by the Atlanta people. George, I appreciate it, my brother. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Bulltwit, go online right now. Bulltwit.net. 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 I almost said it.
Yeah, all right, George. I appreciate it, my man. Thanks a lot.
Somebody better send me a check. I know that. Thanks my ass. I need a check.
We gonna buy your book.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's a deal. Let me put on. Yeah, let me put my goggles on because I gotta be protected up in here. You understand what I'm saying?
But you at the house by yourself, George.
I don't trust me.
All right, y'all. No, y'all kill the music. I got a last final story, please. Kill the music. George Wallace, I appreciate it, my man. Thank you.
You're a good man.
George, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, George.
Don't forget to watch me every Thursday night on Civil Works, okay? Every Thursday night on Civil Works at 7 o'clock. Bye-bye. See you. Oh, that's
I got you. I appreciate it. All right, folks. George is... George is, of course, a crazy man. Folks, back to that Roland Marc Unfiltered video in just
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.